Hey there, this is Natalie, and as we wait really impatiently for Attack on Titan chapter 139, I want to take a look at some of the different theories going around on different elements of the ending. And for this video, I'm going to be covering a few theories around Eren still being alive after being decapitated by Mikasa in chapter 138. Right now, chapter 139 of Attack on Titan is kind of a Schrodinger's box, containing both a dead Eren and a living Eren, and neither state will properly exist until we get to see what's inside. But are the theories that Eren is still going to be alive at the end of Attack on Titan just copes, or do any of them seem especially viable? Now, what any theory like this needs to have to be viable is a way for Mikasa cutting off the head inside of Eren's Titan not to kill him. From the vision she experienced in chapter 138, whether that came from her own imagination, from Eren, or from Ymir, it seems like the intention was for Mikasa to resolve to kill Eren in that moment. It's reasonable to think that this was something Eren either caused or anticipated. So it's also reasonable to think that if his plan did include him surviving, he would have been able to prepare a way for that to happen. So, one theory that was originally going around as some alleged leaks for chapter 138, though they did prove to be false, was that Eren hasn't actually been inside the Founding Titan all of this time, and he's remained on Paradis inside a crystal shell, using the power of the Warhammer Titan to control things. The alleged leak went on to say he would break out of the shell after the explosion at the end of chapter 137, and would go to where Historia's baby had just been born, which in this theory has inherited the Beast Titan from Zeke. He'd then touch the baby, and that would restart the rumbling. Now, when none of this happened in chapter 138, a lot of people wrote off this theory, because, well, it claimed to say what was in the chapter, and it had been completely wrong about it. However, since we didn't see Historia's baby at all, and chapter 138 ended up essentially continuing the fight, it actually doesn't rule out any of this stuff happening in the final chapter instead. A lot of the discussion around that theory when it was new included talk of the head inside the Founding Titan, and how despite being Eren's head, it just had a blank stare. This was still the case when Mikasa arrived to chop it off in chapter 138. Originally, this was explained within the theory as being because Eren had moved his consciousness out of his head way back when Gabi shot his head off before, in a similar way to how Reiner had been shown to in Shiganshina. Again, all of the things that worked either in favour of or against this theory don't really change in light of what happened in chapter 138. Eren being able to survive the blast in chapter 137 and create a new Titan structure straight away, containing that same blank-looking head, could be attributed to him controlling everything from far away on Paradis, where nothing happening here in the battle can actually affect him physically. And just as when this theory was presented as chapter 138 leaks, there are some things about it that really do make a lot of sense. For one thing, without a theory like this, the Warhammer Titan ability has played no real role in the story, which for the amount of gravity given to its introduction, and to Eren getting that ability, has always seemed a bit strange. It would also make Historia's baby, and the concept of Titan Shifter abilities being passed on to newborn Eldians, actually pay off in a meaningful way. It's not the only way those things could be tackled. There are definitely other ways Historia's baby could be important, but the idea that Zeke's Beast Titan ability should have gone to a baby somewhere is still a thing. Now, it's possible that that's just never going to be mentioned, because all Titan abilities will perhaps be gone from the world at the end of the story, and so it won't actually matter. Or maybe there's something else entirely going on with that. But this theory would cover a lot of things that would otherwise feel like loose ends or underused story elements. But then we have other theories that don't use the Warhammer theory at all, and instead just put it forward that Eren survived the decapitation just by using that method of distributing his consciousness into his body. And so he's still on the scene when the battle's happening, but he's not dead, and will be able to regrow a new head. If this is the case, this would also be how he survived the explosion in chapter 137. Now, if he wants to restart the rumbling in this situation, it would presumably be by making contact with the spine creature. The Alliance seem to believe that this will make the Wall Titans start moving again, and so it's possible that that is the case, and Eren doesn't actually need to reconnect with a Titan Shifter with royal blood to restart the rumbling now it's already begun. However, what I think is also interesting to discuss is that it's also possible that Eren is still alive by either one of these methods, but that his intention is actually not to restart the rumbling. I did say in my analysis video for chapter 138 that I personally felt like Eren probably was dead, and the reason for that at the time was that it just seemed like too much went into getting Mikasa to the point of being ready to kill him for that to be a fake out, at least not as late in the story as this. It seemed like the dream scene established why Eren was doing what he was doing, with Dream Eren basically showing the results of if Eren hadn't had the determination to commit to the rumbling, and positioning it as him having only had those two options, one of hiding away and causing this scenario, where everyone on Paradis would likely be killed in the coming war, and Historia would have to inherit Titan Shifter abilities and pass them down through her family, or of starting the rumbling and causing genocide. I personally think there was always another option, which was to do Zeke's plan, but that's a topic for another video. We get the impression here that Eren didn't specifically want to commit genocide, he just liked the idea of that more than he wanted Paradis to be destroyed, and since those were his two options, and since he can't really choose the option that involves doing nothing when his whole thing is moving forward, he started the rumbling. But just because that was the action he was free to take, he also always saw his friends as being free to stop him. He never took away their abilities or killed them, even though he could have easily done that if he just didn't want anyone to stand in his way, perhaps because he saw the best outcome as being if he started the rumbling, but the Alliance stopped it. Armin and Mikasa being on board with killing him of their own free will was essential to that happening, and we see them both prove that they were persuaded that that was the course of action they wanted to take, again without being manipulated so Eren could still see them as being free, with Armin trying to kill Eren in chapter 137 and Mikasa in chapter 138. And it's also important to note that Jean, Connie and Levi also contributed to these attempts to kill Eren. Now, whether this is a dream Mikasa has on her own, because she always somewhat understood that this was the choice Eren had faced, but didn't want to face that the option where he chose her led to an unacceptable outcome, or whether this is a dream shown to her by Eren or Ymir, we don't really know yet. So it's hard to say whether this is intended to be the explanation of Eren's position from Eren, or whether it's an explanation of Mikasa finally accepting that she's prepared to kill him. But in either case, it would rob all of that of so much meaning if Eren's intention was still to survive and restart the rumbling. And that would seem like a weird thing for Isayama to take back in the final chapter, and that's why I did think that Eren's death was permanent. But the more I thought about it, the more it seems like, unless Eren had it in his head that he needed to sacrifice himself to achieve what he wanted, given he does seem to have ways he could have planned to physically survive this, why wouldn't he have made it so that all of this stuff could lead to him simply being defeated and not killed? We see with the life organism, and with Titan Shifter abilities in general, that survival is an important theme, which is kind of at odds with the 13-year death sentence on the Titan Shifters, but we'll come to that. If Eren's will is the will of the Attack Titan, Eren's plan, ever including sacrificing himself, does seem to go against that theme of the instinct to survive and keep moving forwards. Plus, we see the guilt people in Attack on Titan experience for the stuff they have to do in the name of their objectives, and in this case, Eren has had to do worse things than anyone else by far, and he's not an evil character who enjoys killing humans or causing suffering. He's not even consumed by hatred for the people on the mainland after his time spent there, so it's not like he's not going to experience the weight of that. It kind of feels like being killed lovingly by Mikasa as part of his own plan would seem like too easy of an ending for him than to live on and hold himself accountable for both the freedom he worked for and the destruction that led to it. But still, as much as an ending where Eren is still alive but isn't intent on restarting the rumbling kind of makes sense to me as something that Isayama might do, it would be fairly meaningless for him to survive if the curse of Ymir remains, because he wouldn't have very long to live anyway, and any peace between Paradis and what remains of the rest of the world wouldn't last long if there still needed to be this planned succession of Titan shifter abilities. So, to me, having Ymir experience the realization she did through both Armin and Mikasa's actions, as well as being freed by Eren himself, all contributes to this. And Eren's final part of the plan is to ask her, not command her because she's free now, to take away Titan powers from the world, perhaps by killing the organism, because it seems like she may be the only one who can do that, given everything that it's survived so far. Now this could still happen if Eren is dead, as he may be able to do this from the paths before that world is presumably closed off forever by the Titan powers leaving the world. But I could see her final act before doing it to be rebuilding Eren's body, so he might live on as a normal human. This might sound too much like a super happy ending, having Eren survive, as well as the end of the rumbling and peace between the Eldians and Marley, possibly the people who got titanized in chapter 138 reverting back, and all of the Titan shifters being freed from the curse of Ymir. But it's not like Eren would be forgiven and loved again by everybody else. Maybe he would just live on in secret somewhere and never see his friends again, always wondering, like Levi said so long ago, if the decisions he made were really the right ones. The Alliance would always have to live with what happened, with Mikasa and Armin in particular always believing they'd had to kill the person most important to them. It would be a hopeful ending, but not really a super happy shonen one, and it would definitely meet the criteria for being considered bittersweet. So, those are my thoughts on the various possibilities around Eren still being alive. I do still think there's a strong chance that he is dead, and anything more we see of him will be from the paths, but I'm way less persuaded about that than I was when chapter 138 first came out. While I did like the Warhammer theory as a potential chapter 138, and I do still think it would be a cool ending if it is what happens, I really just think that undoing the stuff in the real chapter 138 with that kind of twist feels a bit off at this point. So I'm not as into it as an idea as I was a month ago, but I still think it would be a bold and suitable ending to the series. So honestly, there aren't really any options I've talked about here that I would really hate if they happened. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this, and I hope to see you again very soon to talk about more Attack on Titan ending possibilities.